Back to school season is very much upon us, whether you've already gone back, you're about to go back, or it's not you, it's your kids. Whatever the situation might be, there doesn't seem like there could ever be a better time to bring back the Parenting Autism series and have a look at school. Hello folks and welcome back to the return of the Parenting Autism series. My name's Kevin Chapman, and in this series we have a look in detail at a specific aspect of being the parent of a child with autism. We've looked at all sorts of stuff in the past. There is a big playlist at the top where we break it down subject by subject and answer your questions on those particular topics. If that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, etc, etc. You know the drill. I assume this isn't your first YouTube video, but today we're going to be looking at school because it's back to school season and we often get a lot of questions about Andy's school. Now, disclaimer up front, this isn't going to be about school refusal. Long-term viewers of the channel will know that Andy did actually spend a year and a half just refusing to go to school, and we've actually already done one of these parenting autism videos specifically on that, on school refusal. So if you're interested in school refusal, that video is up there too. But this one is going to be just more school in general to a point, but looking at the questions that have come in, there's actually an awful lot of very specific questions that you've got about Andy and his school life, his education journey, that kind of thing. So I think we're going to break with tradition on this series, try and avoid it being another half-hour monster when I've got so many questions ahead of me, and just jump straight into the questions. Usual warning at the start though, we did get, I think, over 125 questions submitted. There was a lot of questions. Obviously, it's not realistic for us to go through 125 questions in one video. So we've focused in on the ones that got the most thumbs ups from other people who are reading through, because we assume that that means they're the ones that you're most interested in. We've also removed any that are very similar to other questions or would lead to similar answers, and just some have been cut for the purposes of fitting them into the video. If your question didn't get answered, or if you have a major question about school that hasn't been answered in this video, then use that comment section, let us know. And as we always say, we're never against returning to one of these topics in the future if there are enough questions left unanswered to justify doing a second video. So with just a sip of my coffee, let's jump into the questions. How big are Andy's classes at school, or does he have one-to-one lessons? He has one-to-one support. He doesn't have one-to-one lessons. So he has a one-to-one TA, teaching assistant, assigned to him all the time. His class that he's in, there's probably 5 or 6 kids in there. It does vary slightly from time to time because they're not all stuck in one class that they have to stay in throughout the entire school year. It's a little bit fluid to meet the needs of the individual kids. But last time we were in there, I think there were 6 kids in his class. There's certainly no space in the room for more than 8. There's a table for, I think, 6 kids in the middle of the room with the teacher in front of them. And then there's a couple of individual work pods to the side of the room. Andy's in one of those work pods where he has walls up either side of him but can see out the front to see the rest of the classroom. He sits in there with his TA, and it just allows him to focus in on the tasks, because if he was as part of the general class population, he'd find it very overwhelming, very distracting, and it'd be much harder for him to complete his work. There are subjects that Andy thrives in. There's a couple actually from his report at the end of last year that he was doing really, really well in. He always used to be maths. Maths always used to be his thing, and he is still doing very well at maths. We've been told in the past that although he has a developmental delay in general, his mathematical ability is roughly where you would expect any typical 14-year-old's mathematical ability to be. So he's roughly where you would expect him to be for his age for maths, but he's actually now even better than that with his reading age. His reading age has actually gone beyond age 14 now. He can read very, very well. He also excels at anything to do with computers, ICT lessons in school, anything along those lines he's very, very good at. The stuff that he struggles with a little bit more are the more abstract subjects that aren't as focused in on logic or don't provide him with a useful skill, because obviously maths is very logical. English, reading and ICT, they give him actual useful skills that he uses in his day-to-day life. It's much harder to get him engaged in something like geography or history or religious studies or any of these other things that they do cover at his school, but it's just really hard to get Andy to want to be involved in that or because he doesn't care, just not interested. There is a sensory place at Andy's school. In fact, there's a few different sensory rooms available to him. They've got some really, really good facilities at Andy's school. So the one we often hear him talk about on the vlog is the swing room, which, as the name suggests, is a room with a massive sensory swing in with dimmed lights. It's quiet in there. That's his number one go-to place for when he needs to chill out. But they do have a number of safe spaces dotted around the school that are like massive tents, but with mattresses in the bottom. It's zip up, so he can be in there, lie down, zip up and shut himself off from the rest of the world and chill out. So when we was first integrating him back into school, he used the safe spaces a lot. He would just go straight in and go straight to the safe space and just wait until he'd leveled himself out before he was able to come out and get back involved in the rest of the day. But they also have something absolutely brilliant, which we have featured on the vlog once before. It's the one time we've been allowed to film in his school, which was when he went to see Santa at Christmas, and they did that in the 4D room. And the 4D room, if you've never been in a 4D room, it is brilliant. It's a room where the floor, the ceiling and all the walls are screens or have projectors pointing at them so they can display stuff, and there's a computer in the middle of the room where you can pick the scene that you want to display, and you can make it a winter wonderland. You can make it a game so that you can interact with different parts of the floor and the walls, and it's so cool. And he really likes it in there. And because there's quite a few kids in the school and they all want to be in there all the time, they do kind of rotate when they're allowed to go into the 4D room, but it's always one of the highlights of his week. And of course the newest thing that they got in September, which he talks about a lot and was very disappointed last year when it was unavailable while it was being repaired, they now have a hot spa in school as well, which he gets to use once a week. And again, another really cool sensory experience that he really enjoys. How did we explain the concept of Andy moving primary schools and moving from primary school to secondary school? And we didn't really explain the concept as such. We just told him that that's what was happening. And I think as with Andy, as long as you give him enough notice that something is happening, he's never really been that interested in the why. He just wants to know that it is happening so he can prepare for it. When Anna and Andy moved from Nottingham to Peterborough, he never questioned why that was happening. We told him well in advance. We told him often. He got used to the idea. He's absolutely fine with it. So likewise, when he moved from his school in Nottingham to the primary school in Peterborough, pretty easy adjustment. Moving from his primary school here to his secondary school here, that was more of a challenge just because the focus switched quite a lot from what it was at primary school, which was very much around social skills. And I don't want to criticise him because they really did help him a lot, but the atmosphere there was more akin to like a play group than a school. They didn't do a huge amount of what to him would seem like obvious learning. It was all very much hidden in what they were doing. They were really clever with how they did it, but the atmosphere was very much, we're here to have fun, let's enjoy our day, and you might accidentally learn some stuff along the way. Whereas moving into secondary school, we got a timetable for what lessons he was going to be doing and when. He actually has to produce physical work now, which he didn't have to do before, and he found that adjustment really quite difficult. And that was one of the contributing factors, along with all the other stuff that went on, that led him to start refusing school within 3 months of starting secondary school and not going back until the start of year 9. We're often asked about whether or not Andy's going to take GCSEs or equivalent qualifications, and our answer is always he probably will take some at some point, but there's no time pressure for that. He doesn't have to take them at a particular age or when everyone else is taking them. Contrary to what a lot of people seem to think, to conventional wisdom, nobody has to take their exams at a certain age. It's just that schools put the exams at the end of year 11 more often than not, but you can do them in year 9, year 10, you can do them later. GCSEs can happen as and when the student is ready for them. And at the moment, although Andy's maths and reading abilities are of the level of a kid who was just about to start studying for their GCSEs, his actual attention span and ability to produce work in an exam environment isn't. He could not sit down for an hour and a half of uninterrupted work and answer questions on a maths paper. If you gave him those same questions that he could talk through the answers or do them on a computer or do them on a whiteboard, and you just give him 1 or 2 questions, then let him have 10 minutes on the iPad, he'll be able to do them. So he has the ability there, but he doesn't yet have the ability to do an exam. So It's really, really unlikely that he'll be taking GCSE exams at the end of year 11, like Lucy just has, like Amy will. But that doesn't mean he'll never take them, because as we've seen in the last year, he's had huge leaps forward in development in all manners of area of his life. Even in the last week or so, we've seen his speech come on massively. So it could be that one day he just, a switch flicks inside him and he decides he wants to do an exam and decides he wants to, I don't know, do an English reading assessment or something. And if he decides he wants to do them, then absolutely we will put him through those exams. Is Andy the subject of bullying at school? No. Mainly because of the fact, A, he has constant one-to-one support, so he's always got an adult with him, even at break times, even at lunch times, even when he goes to the toilet, he always has an adult with him, so there's no opportunity for anyone to bully him. There's been a few times where he's had been hit or bitten, but it wasn't a malicious bullying thing. It was another kid with autism who was mid-meltdown or didn't like what was happening, and it was their way of coping with their surroundings. So because he's in a special school and he's not got a bunch of typical year 10 bullies who are going to go around and make his life hell because he's different, thankfully he doesn't get exposed to that kind of thing, which is, I know it's something that any kid with autism who's in a mainstream school can find that a real challenge, but thankfully it's not something Andy has to deal with. Does Andy's school work in the same way as mainstream schools do, in the sense that they move up every year, get a new timetable, different teachers, people he works with, etc., etc.? No, it doesn't. The classes that they're in aren't based on age, they're based on ability, and Andy's actually been in the top class, so what in a mainstream school would be your year 11 class. He's been in that all through last year and will likely remain in that for the next 2 years as well. So he's kind of going to be going through the same routines 2 more times, not repeating the same work, because all the work is individualized anyway. They don't have 6 or 7 kids in the room all working on the same thing. They all have very individual personalized curriculums, unless they're doing like a group activity like cooking or doing PE, in which case it doesn't hurt him to repeat making cheese on toast 3 times a year, 3 years in a row, because then he's getting used to making cheese on toast. But for the actual academic stuff, it's all very personalised, all very individualised, and he is in the top group already, so won't be moving on until the end of year 11, at which point he'll move into their post-16 provision, which is in a different part of the building, but still within the same school. That being said, there are going to be some changes for Andy to face in September. We already know that his teacher from last year has left the school and has been replaced, and we found out on the last day of term that his TA, who he adores, is being moved to a different class within the school. Now that's something we're in the process of appealing, because one of the things as part of Andy's EHCP, his educational healthcare plan meeting that we had most recently, back in, I think it was as recently as May, we agreed that obviously we can't stop the school from ever changing anything, but everyone in the meeting, so us, the teachers, the social worker, the dietitian was there I think as well, everyone agreed that they shouldn't be changing more than one thing at a time for Andy. So if the teacher's leaving, don't change the TA, don't change the room, don't change the transport. If someone from the transport leaves, etc., etc. So with the teacher already leaving, as far as we're concerned and as far as that meeting is concerned, there should now be a hold on anything else changing. So his TA now being moved on as well could be problematic. He could absolutely take it in his stride, but I don't know that we should necessarily be testing to see if he will. So what we've said to them, and we're waiting for a reply, is it's fine if you want to move the TA to a different part of the school, but can we give it a month? Go through the whole of September with the only new thing being the teacher. When he's used to the teacher, then change the TA. And hopefully they'll be able to accommodate us. They've always been very good at accommodating us with things like that in the past, so hopefully that is what will end up happening. But at the moment, the plan is, although he's going to the same room, it's going to be with completely different adults in there, which could be a challenge for him. He doesn't really have a favourite teacher, mainly because he doesn't move around from lesson to lesson the way you do in a mainstream school. It's all the same teacher in the same room, and they're not necessarily all even working on the same subject at the same time. And yeah, he doesn't move around from teacher to teacher to teacher, unless it is for something specific like PE. We've said before that Andy won't sit any exams, so will he ever be able to work? Does this ever worry you or make you worry about Andy's future? Again, my answer to stuff like this is always the same, and it's I know it's not a particularly informative answer, but the honest answer is we just don't know. And there's never going to be any pressure on him. We're never going to pressure him into doing exams. We won't pressure him into getting a job. We won't pressure him into doing anything. If he ends up never able to get a job, then we'll just work around that and find a way that he can continue to survive without that being an issue. I'd like to think by the time that happens, we're talking 5 years down the line when he leaves school, if he's unable to move into work at that point, then hopefully we'll be in the financial position to continue to support him. He'll still be able to get some of the benefits that he gets now. I imagine there'll be new benefits that will come in for him as an adult who's unable to work for medical reasons. It won't just be he doesn't fancy it. It will be he has a disability that is preventing him from having a job, and there are benefits in place to help him with that, and we'll hopefully be there to top up the difference. Hopefully through Andy's eyes, his channel will have grown enough where that can become monetized and that can start bringing him in some income as well. And let's face it, I don't exactly have a conventional job, although I've had them in the past. I've found a way to suit my family and still be able to earn money and support us, and hopefully Andy will be able to find a way to pursue his passion and find a way to monetize that and make that something that allows him to support himself. I'm more keen to support him into something like that. If he wants to do something with YouTube or wants to do something with gaming or computing or all these areas of interest that he's got, I'm much more likely to help him pursue something like that than get stressed out because he's not able to go and round up the trolleys in Tesco car park. That being said, if he wants to go and round at the trolleys in Tesco car park and would be satisfied and would enjoy doing that, then I will absolutely support him in doing that as well. But there won't ever be any pressure on him. You must go and do this job because you must pay your own way. I wouldn't ever say that to any of my kids. I want them all to be able to grow and mature at their own rate and grow into their own things. And I think I'm just a hipster. And he doesn't have homework. No. His school starts at 9 in the morning and he's there and, well, he gets home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so he leaves about 2:45ish. He actually leaves before the end of the school day. The school day is 9 until 3, but he gets to leave a little bit early so that he doesn't have to get caught up in the rush because of his individual transport that he has. So he's there 6 hours. 6 hours is plenty. There's no reason to add homework on top of that. He's not completing 6 hours of schoolwork while he's there. Trying to get him to do another 20 minutes when he gets home would be utterly counterproductive, and luckily the school do understand that. His school's not just for autistic children, it's for children with all special needs. There are a lot of children with autism there, but there are also children there with physical disabilities as well. So it's a school for people who wouldn't be able to be a part of mainstream education for whatever reason. There is an autism specialist secondary school a similar distance from home to the school that he goes to now. That was the one he was originally going to be going to. That's the one where he did all his transition work with between primary and secondary school. And unfortunately, when it came to the end of July, when he was in year 6 and about to move up into secondary school, we got a letter through from them saying, actually, you know what, we're full, there's no room for him here, you're going to have to go to this one instead. And actually this one's been fine, but your long time viewers will know that when we were really struggling to get him back into school and felt like we weren't getting all the support that we needed from his school, we did keep going on about the fact that there is this school specific to him that is also just 10 miles away. Ideal world, he'd be going there, but we've contacted them a couple of times over the last few years since that original rejection, and they just don't have the space to take him. Does Andy have any friends at school? Not friends in the traditional sense of he texts them and hangs out with them or even very much talks about them, but there is a small group of them who are in his class who also go to the respite place at the same time as him, so he gets to spend time with them there as well. And it's been deliberately set. It was a very coordinated plan to try and get this small group of like 3 or 4 kids who ordinarily would have absolutely no interest in socialisation. Socialisation? Is that socialising? I think I've just made up a word. Add it to the dictionary now. These kids who ordinarily wouldn't have any interest in spending time with any other kids, putting them in situations where they're constantly together so they get used to each other, and they're the closest that he's got to friends. We haven't ever thought about taking Andy out of school because for us, the benefit of school isn't just, or even isn't, we don't send him to school to get him qualifications so he can get a job. He goes to school to learn independence from us. So it helps him with social skills. It helps him with independent skills that we can't help him with at home, because by the very nature of us being here, he can't be independent doing them. Even little things like going to the toilet without us there, or learning to cross the street without us there. And it's very much about learning the social skills, learning the independent skills. They do things like take them down the shops, have them practicing using some money. And these are all very important skills that, yes, we could do some of those things with him, but as his parents, we're naturally much more protective, probably overprotective, than trained professionals are. They know where they can push him and where they shouldn't push him, and they get better results than we do in improving his social skills. You've seen the huge progress he's made with his communication over the last year, and we talk a lot about the difference that just getting a little bit older has made, the difference that taking his medication has made. We can't hide from the fact that the previous 18 months he wasn't going to school. He's been back in school a year now and has made huge progress, so they've obviously been a massive contributing factor to that as well. Does Andy spend much time doing academic lessons? Not traditional ones like what you'd get in a mainstream school, but he does do a decent amount of academic work, but it's very small chunks. So they'll perhaps get him to do one sheet of maths work, which will perhaps have 3 problems on, and then he gets a reward. And then they'll ask him to do something else and he gets a reward. And the reward is usually some time on the iPad, or some time in the 4D room or the swing room. But it's very, very small chunks, but it does accumulate over the course of the day. Does he understand why he has to go to school? No. We touched on this earlier on in the video as well. Why isn't really a concept that Andy concerns himself with. He doesn't ever ask why. He doesn't ever explain why. Things either are or they aren't. He's Yoda. You either do, see, Star Trek reference. But you either do or you don't. You are or you aren't. There's no why. So he goes to school because, and again, there's no because in his vocabulary. It's a word I've never heard him say. But he goes to school because he goes to school, which is quite hard to get your head around if you've never tried to view things from his mindset. But yeah, he goes to school every day because that's where he goes every day. Was it hard to get Andy a place at his school? No, not at all. Like I say, it all came together in the last 3 days of term. We got the letter from the school he was going to be going to saying he couldn't go there, and the same post we got a letter from the council saying he's going to go here instead. We went to meet them the next day, and then he started in September. We didn't even apply to this school that he's in now. He was just put there. There would have been no benefit at all in putting him in a mainstream school. The council were fully aware of that, and thankfully there were a number of options locally, so they were able to put him in one of those. I don't know what they'd have done if this school had been full as well. I assume they had a plan, but that plan never at any point would have involved putting him back into mainstream school. He's not been in mainstream school since he was in year 2, I think. So moving him back into mainstream now is just not anything that will ever be considered. How does school present changes in routine? Have they helped him understand any changes they expect for the new school year? They very much work similar to us with a timetable, days of the week board, and now and next within that. So this is what you're doing now, this is what you're doing next, and that's constantly updated throughout the day. They use a lot of social stories to help with him as well. Sometimes I think they could do a little bit better with both keeping a set routine and communicating changes to routine better with Andy, because he really struggled the last week or so of term in July because they were out of their normal routine and he didn't really get what was going on because it wasn't what he normally does. So he struggled with that. And also Christmas is always a time when he really struggles at school because the routine changes so much. The place looks different because decorations are up. It's suddenly dark or getting dark when he goes home in the evening. That's different. Lessons are different. They're making Christmas presents and Christmas cards rather than doing maths puzzles. They have a Christmas fair and a Christmas assembly and a Christmas play, and it's all different from his normal routine, and he finds it really, really difficult. And it would be nice to have, I don't want to say don't do those activities, because I know for a lot of the kids there, they probably love all that stuff. We went to the Christmas fair last year and it was busy. There were a lot of kids enjoying themselves. But at the same time, there's a lot of kids there similar to Andy who hated it and didn't even go in the room. So as they're split off into different classes anyway, and it's a really difficult thing to I'd be interested in your thoughts down in the comments. What would you do? Do you try and include Andy in that kind of thing, even though you know he's going to hate it? But ultimately it's for his greater good, because in real life, Christmas happens. Everything changes at Christmas. Decorations go up. He needs to get used to that. Or do you just let him sit it out and carry on doing maths puzzles in the classroom on his own, or with the other kids who don't want to be involved? And it is a difficult one, because I can see the pluses and minuses of both sides of it. And lastly, does Andy learn any life skills at school? For example, cooking. He does cooking. They cook once a week. He doesn't eat any of it yet, but he is handling a lot of food, which is very important. The big life skills stuff, though, comes in when he moves into their post-16 provision in a couple of years' time. He has 3 years of post-16 with them when the time comes, and their sixth form area is fantastic. They've got, basically, it's almost like a mock-up of a flat in there. So there's a kitchen, there's a washing machine, there's tumble dryer, there's ironing boards, toasters, microwaves, kettles, a little cooking area, and probably other stuff that I can't remember. We walked around it once 3 years ago. But the idea is, by the time they leave, and this was how it was sold to us when we went to that first meeting back at the start of year 7, by the time they leave that post-16 area, they should be ready to move into some kind of assisted living and move off to college. Now, that's obviously not always realistic for every student. It's not what every student wants, but he should, by the time he leaves, be comfortable washing his clothes, drying his clothes, ironing his clothes. Not that any of our clothes ever get ironed, you know, we wear t-shirts. He should be comfortable making himself a sandwich and eating that sandwich, and he should be able to warm up some beans in the microwave and make a cup of tea, and just general life skills like that. They get out and about in the community as well. They go shopping, they go and practice crossing the road. All the really important life skills that kids would often just pick up naturally as they get older. And the big focus at that point is to get them ready to, because once they're in post-16 and they've got 3 years left, there is a big clock ticking in the corner to when they're not considered a kid anymore by social services, by the council, by education. And as soon as they become an adult, everything changes. Even stuff like respite care. They don't go to the same respite place anymore, and it's not fun anymore. Respite care for adults is very much get the carers a rest, whereas for kids it's the carers get a rest but the kids get to go somewhere awesome and have fun. That's not really what adult respite care is like, the way I understand it. So the idea at that point is to prepare him for what comes next, which the goal, certainly from the school's perspective, I don't know if it's necessarily our goal. We haven't thought that far ahead yet. We don't know how Andy is going to be at that point, but what the school are working towards all the way through, but specifically once they get to that post-16 age group, is get them ready to move into some kind of assisted living accommodation and be able to start a course at the local college. If he's able to do that in 5 years' time, you've got to say that's been a job well done. But we are going to leave things there on this video. I know I said it wasn't going to be another super long one, and it has ended up being super long again, because apparently I can't help myself. I just talk a lot. Hopefully you have enjoyed it though. If you have, please make sure you leave a nice big thumbs up on there for us. Use the comment section. If there's a question about school and Andy's school that we haven't answered yet, let us know down in the comments. If we get enough of those, we'll redo this topic. And also let us know down there what topic you would like to see us do in this series next week. Subscribe to the channel for more videos in this series, plus our daily vlogs the rest of the week. And thank you very much for watching.